And welcome back to Lively Extra, our special online bonus segment when 30 minutes is just not enough. We'll reintroduce the panel, Paige Parks and Dan McGowan and Arlene Violet. We were talking a little bit about the state budget. I want to shift topics and go to the federal government. We've had a lot of judicial action. You've been keeping an eye on some of the federal judges. This is an ongoing story this week with the Trump administration executive orders. It seems like the judiciary is getting a little bit of traction now, and I just wonder when Congress is going to step up at this point as a check and balance.
Yeah, I think Congress is really a body of dereliction of duty if you're a Republican in that Congress. I'm ashamed of them, quite honestly, for not standing up. Look, you now have a president who talked about the fact that he's not sure he has to uphold the Constitution. When judges rule against him, he does the same thing that he does with the media. The media says he does something wrong. They're, quote unquote, the fake media. Now, these judges who rule against him on constitutional grounds, they're woke. They're
some appointed
Democrats.
By Reagan, Bush, and Trump.
Absolutely, but it
right?
doesn't matter. They've lost their minds, etc. So this dynamic of him attacking everything ought to have everyone very, very concerned about the demagoguery that's going on in this country. To me, Mr. Trump is the most dangerous man in America.
Paige?
Well, I'm a former social studies teacher. And so I'm like, wow, this is like the in real life example of why three branches of government are important. And if one is not doing its job and the other is dangerous, it's on for the third branch to be able to do its work. So I talked to my kids at home about, like, this is actually why the Constitution was written the way that it is. And this is a test to see how well and how strong our judiciary branch can be when our other two branches are not doing their job, or, as Arlene said, just flat out dangerous.
This is where you get into that conversation that you've probably had a lot on Lively Experiment over the last couple of months, which is like, are we entering constitutional crisis mode? I think the good news is that the system is working at least roughly the way it is supposed to work, in the sense that the judiciary is actually oftentimes ruling against the president when he's overreaching, things like that. The question becomes, is there going to be, and there's been a couple already, but how much is President Trump willing to push the envelope to say, I'm not going to acknowledge judicial decisions, and how much is the Supreme Court, which has made a couple of rulings that have been sort of against Trump, even though this is a more conservative Supreme Court. How much, as we start to see a lot of the things getting challenged by various states, including Rhode Island, many lawsuits by Rhode Island, when the Supreme Court actually, weighs in on these things.
This is his court.
Right.
He can't say, they're,
He can't, right. But I think this is his court. It is true. It is a more conservative court, but I do have general faith in this body, and I don't think that they're necessarily, just because it's his court or a more conservative court, that they're all going to rule with him. In fact, so far they haven't done that. And so, the question is going to be, what's President Trump going to do then? My guess is, Arlene's right, he's just going to attack them too and say, I made a mistake by choosing Kavanaugh.
I wonder if Amy Coney Barrett's going to be the Sandra Day O'Connor of her time, because she's shown a couple of times that she's broken with the conservatives.
Yes, she has, in fact, demurred. To me, all my hope is in the judiciary of trying to get this back to balance in terms of constitutionality. But just remember, there are certain things that Mr. Trump is doing that people haven't challenged. For example, the use of the military against civilians under that trumped-up business that this is we're in a war and aliens and all of this stuff. There's no lawsuits, in effect, addressing that issue. And the moment he announced that he has a panel, none of us know who were on it, a commission that went and looked at all the generals in the Army. 20% of them are losing their jobs. They either are going to get demoted or they've already resigned. He wants an army that will go against citizens. I'm telling you right now, it's obvious that he's not going to stop pushing the envelope because it doesn't fit with his concept. But that he is dangerous, particularly with generals. The first thing Hitler did was to co-opt the army so that they would follow orders, yes, sir, and have their Pledge of Allegiance to the leader as opposed to the Constitution of the United States that he's dissing constantly. We are in a crisis in this country, and I regret that far too many people say, as long as he's not coming for me, he's after those immigrants, he's after minorities, it's not me, though, I'm safe. You're giving into this. We're going to have a crisis in this country right around the corner.
But from your social studies days, the checks and balances, I think where the rubber's going to hit hit the road is you have some congressmen and senators in deep red states. The farmers are getting killed now. The midterms are next year. So they're worried about Trump, but they're also worried about their jobs, too. At some point, there's going to be pressure on them to step up, I would think.
Right, and for all of us who are actually doing some national landscape work, like how can we help those who are in those red states whose voices aren't being heard, right? We need to help also get those stories out as well, and because we need to be watching what's happening in those states, closely watching and empowering those folks in any way that we can to make sure their voices are heard. And I'm also just curious about, a lot of this is assumptions that we respect rules. So what happens when someone doesn't respect a rule? What do we do next?
You teach your kids,
how do we
right?
prepare
Follow
for that?
the rules,
Follow
right?
the rules. So I'm like, okay, so someone doesn't follow the rules. What do you do? What resources do we have? What is the strategy here?
Yeah.
Final thoughts on that before we get to outrage?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, the situation where you have a president who will not follow the rules, and this is the entire point. That's the whole ballgame, right? It's going to be everything down to how much is he willing to push it. And I do think this was something you also said. Traditionally, the number one thing, the only thing Congress cares about is getting reelected,
Themselves,
right?
right.
Is themselves. It's getting a little bit closer where in red states, I think Republicans really, really care deeply about what President Trump thinks and getting primaried and those kind of things. They still, though, care most about themselves.
Okay.
And so that's where I think the tipping point comes.
You get the last word on this.
First of all, we think it's quirky that he wants a military parade on Flag Day, which happens to be his birthday, just like North Korea, China,
Jong-un,
etc. Folks, wake up.
Yeah.
This man is completely different, but you're acquiescing that, oh, it's quirky and he's doing some good stuff, or, oh, and the tariffs are really working. He's an inveterate liar. And in the UK, there's people out there who are Republicans, and I consider myself a Republican. They're saying, oh, well, we just got to deal with UK. What do you know, Violet? That deal is nothing. It's exactly what they wanted. The 10% tariff has been there, but England didn't want it on cars and aluminum and steel, and that's all off. Okay? So it's all show. It's all show. And I don't understand why people don't wake up. And we're getting into that modality that as long as he goes after everybody else, we're fine.
All right, let's. I skipped over him during the main segment. Let's do outrages and or kudos. Dan, what do you have this week?
Hummel, shame on you for not talking about the most important thing.
The Knicks and the Celtics.
Nope.
What? Not
Real Housewives of Rhode
Oh,
Island.
the Real Housewives. I totally missed it.
Here's my outrage. It's a preemptive outrage, and it is about the Real Housewives of Rhode Island. All these politicians this week say, oh, it's such a great thing. We can't wait for them to celebrate Rhode Island's history. Have they ever watched the Real Housewives?
Snooki comes to Matunic, right?
But here's what I'm mostly worried about, is that when they come in and when they embarrass Rhode Island, you're going to have all these politicians that are going to say, this is an outrage. Let's put in a resolution banning this thing from the state. Just have fun with it. Let them mock us a little bit. It'll be perfectly charming. Some people will like it. It'll probably last one season, and then it'll be over. Do not overreact and try to let the legislature decide, what content can be produced in Rhode Island. Because that's what's coming. I'm guaranteeing some goofball in the legislature is going to do it, going to try to do that.
What do you have, Paige?
So we talked about the fact book a lot, so I want to give kudos to my team at Rhode Island Kids Count, who spent 6 months creating this book, long nights, many weekends. Kudos to them for all that good work. And we're an all-women's team. 11 women put this book together, many of whom will be celebrating Mother's Day this weekend. So I just want to give them
Happy Mother's Day. Arlene, what do you have?
It's just, I'm concerned about the message of hate that is a strong message in the United States of America now. It's the other. And we cannot survive as a society as long as we consider our brothers and sisters as other and less than we are. We're all created equal.
Well said. You began the show and you ended it on a great note. Thank you so much, folks. It is 30 minutes isn't enough. Even the extra segment isn't long enough. Paige, good to see you, and Dan and Arlene. Folks, come back here next week as a lively experiment continues. We hope you have a great weekend and a happy Mother's Day.